Hi. Based on some discussions, I'm going to share some insights on Wi-Fi and cellular, and especially some of our customers and other associates coming from the Wi-Fi world are pretty keen to understand the differences between the Wi-Fi and cellular roaming. So these are just some insights. Obviously, this is a deep area, so I'll try to give the big picture view. My name is Srikanth and I'm with NanoCell Networks. First, 802.11 or Wi-Fi. Um, the so-called roaming has been around right from earlier days with evolutions. Briefly, the idea is when you switch access points belonging to the same ESS, that is the same SSID, we call it as 802.11 roaming or mobility. This was primarily an enterprise issue, but now with multiple APs coming to the home market, this is also trickled down to the home front. And of course, in the earlier days, it was mostly best effort applications that we were running over Wi-Fi. So roaming performance may be not so crucial from the application delay perspective, but now we are running all the real-time applications, the Zooms, the Meets, etc. And so there is a demand both in the enterprise and the home to make sure that the application latencies do not suffer when we roam from one access point to another. Of course, there are proprietary algorithms used for both ends, AP and star use in this process. And in a nutshell, we basically have to complete a new association with differences across the evolution space. I would say the most important point which actually triggered this particular short video was the fact that in Wi-Fi, clients tend to have a lot of power when it comes to the selection of the access points and also pruning their roaming candidates. Okay, so that's why I call them their absolute bosses, because they decide when they will scan with respect to certain thresholds, when they will roam, what band they roam to, what kind of hysteresis values they use, what reports from the infrastructure side do they use, and they could use a variety of measurements in a proprietary manner to decide what is the best AP. Of course, ecosystems like iOS do publish some information which will help the network administrators, the AP, you can say people who design, deploy, and configure APs to suit the configuration on the AP side to match that of the client rules. But then the rules are not the same all the time across devices, and the same device also changes rules with software upgrades. But ultimately, the clients are very powerful in Wi-Fi and actually decide whom they are going to roam to. And of course, the roaming problem has not stood still. We have introduced fast roaming or fast PSS transition, which can help in certain cases. We have allowed certain neighbor reports to be shared by the AP on request from the clients. We have also allowed certain transition management frames and deep information sharing, etc. But all this does not guarantee a roaming performance because it can vary across clients. And so one has to be very careful that we will not get a guaranteed roaming performance across the board. But with good deployment practices and understanding of the client expectations, I think we are starting to see some improvements, at least in the better devices. What about the cellular side? As you know, the cellular side, we have what we call in the 4G era as the E node B, or in the 5G era, this base station has become the G node B. Typically, the fundamental difference is that everything is scheduled and controlled by the radio access network. And this includes the configured measurements that the UE is supposed to report under some threshold conditions, for potential what we call handover. So the word that we use similar to the 802.11 roaming is handover. So the base station configures one or many UEs to follow a set of practices with respect to the frequencies that they are supposed to measure under certain conditions. Even it could be a 4G to 5G kind of transition in the handover. So it's a very complex set of, you can say, configuration which the UE has to obey. It cannot do things arbitrarily, unlike in the Wi-Fi case. So first of all, even to prepare the ground for the handover, potential handover, the UE follows what it should measure, when it should measure, and when it should share in terms of the conditions under which it should share. What happens after the UE shares the measurement? After the UE shares the measurement under some conditions, the RAN decides, the radio access network is going to decide based on its own proprietary logic. It could involve contacting the other base stations to check capacity and other things all over the backhaul network, etc. And finally, it decides what's the best thing for this particular UE based on the measurements that it has given. It might have reported the signal strength seen from multiple base stations, etc. Okay, so unlike the Wi-Fi world, remember that both the measurements and the ultimate handover decision is made by the infrastructure side. Okay, and that's because it's a scheduled band, and I'm sure they want control over this. This also involves high-speed mobility with large number of clients, and so there's a lot of signaling traffic which goes on during handover time, which has to be optimized by the infrastructure side. So a typical view of the handover could be where a serving eNode P, which is originally sent all the logic for measurements, etc., decides that this is the target eNode B, sends the radio resources which are available under certain time conditions, and prepares the ground so that a smooth transfer to the neighboring base station can happen. Remember, cellular handover right from day one, unlike the Wi-Fi roaming, was built for voice, which is a real-time traffic, and so the whole handover process is supposed to meet the delay constraints of the real-time or carrier voice. So handover in cellular has always been under the gun with respect to latency and making sure that the real-time traffic does not get disrupted. And remember, the infrastructure side has a lot of say in making this happen. Okay. So hopefully that has given you some snippet. I know it's a big area into this complex matter. And for more information, please do take a look at our website or our YouTube channel, and we welcome suggestions for anything which can clarify some of the discussions here. Thank you.